useful for a little bit. English is my third language. So, well, Ciro Durán, as Giulia said, shot La Paga when he was only 23 years old. It was his debut film, made in the Andes, in a small village on the border between Venezuela and Colombia in 1962. The beginning of a career that would span over 40 years in support of Colombian and Latin American cinema. The film was considered lost for decades, as no copies were known to exist at the time of its release. Given the political climate of the Cold War in Latin America, it was censored, and the screening was limited to a nearly clandestine showing in Caracas, the capital of Venezuela. That's why this 2024 presentation of La Paga is in many ways a premiere. I won't say too much about the film itself. I'd rather let the images do their thing, but I'd like to give you a brief sense of its historical, biographical, and cinematic context. We can always go into more detail later, as I'll be here to chat after the screening. The film denounces the conditions of exploitation endured by rural workers in Colombia and Venezuela. In that sense, it's a film that honors, through its rhythm and pacing, the tempo of traditional agricultural labor. The everyday rhythm of those who work the land shapes the cinematic rhythm until external forces intervene. The film turns its character and the social and ideological forces they represent into archetypes. It's a film strongly influenced, as Giulia said, by Soviet cinema from the previous decades, both in form and in ideology. It's cinema which left a deep mark on my father, who watched it avidly. It also shows the influence of Italian neorealism, much closer in time to when the film was made. In its cinematic context, La Paga belonged to a key historical moment. That same year, Brazilian director, an iconic director for Latin American film, Glauber Rocha, released his debut feature, Barlavento. A few years earlier, Argentine filmmaker Fernando Virri had premiered the iconic medium-length film, Tigre. So the social and political cinema that would define Latin America filmmaking in the following decades was just beginning to take shape. That's why the recovery of this film is so crucial for the memory of Latin American cinema in the second half of the 20th century. Biographically speaking, my father was born in 1937 in a small town near the Venezuelan border, not far from the village where this film was shot. Although he was not the son of farmers, his father was a town's dentist and his mother a shopkeeper. He witnessed firsthand the condition of inequality and exploitation experienced by rural workers. For this reason, I would say this film, in a way, traverses both the geographical and emotional landscape of his own childhood. As you see, the film also dares to portray the gender violence of the exploited hero himself, something that the political left of the time tended to overlook in its discourse, focused mainly on class inequality. Well, as for the historical context, only 2 years after the triumph of the Cuban Revolution and the March on Havana, which is also very important to the film, we can discuss it more in detail after the screening. Thank you very much for being here.
Thank you, Vladamir. And stay in your seat for the Q&A. Thank you.